So Chad, you were just talking about portfolios a moment ago. So are there things in like a new student's portfolio that you look for, or key things that attract you to it, like in terms of the portfolio from a beginner's point of view?
Definitely. Is it organized? Is it easy to read it? Is it legible? Does it show? The unfortunate thing I think that a lot of people have a misconception about is that if you start working for a design company, you're going to start designing. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It's when you start out, you're going to be organizing things and ordering fabric samples and maybe organizing all of the specification for a project or doing drawings for a project. And I think the thing to show is your technical ability. Show that you know how to use Excel and Word and Mail and just basic skills, along with your creative side. I think a lot of portfolios we see are too focused on the creative and not focused enough on just the basic nuts and bolts of what we do 90% of our day.
So my question is, when you were starting out, and I'm sure this happens now, but specifically when you were starting out, was there moments when you were designing a space and you were like, there's something missing? Like, I don't know what it is, but there's something missing, or I need to, you know, get somewhere in the space that I'm not getting to. Who do you go to? What do you do? You know, like, where do you get to that point where you're like, okay, this is finished?
I think that's part of the process, is that I find that myself and my staff sometimes have to step back and go, really, is this the best that we can do? Is this it? Or is there another layer we can add to this? Is there something better we can do with this? And yeah, we're not afraid to sometimes say, yeah, this is just not cutting it. We can do better. And so whether you just take a moment to really try to find some inspiration and to do just tons of image searching, or just to take a moment to see how you can be inspired, or to step back and really look at what the initial objective was as well, right? Sometimes you kind of lose sight of that, and so sometimes it's just actually getting back to the real bones of what it was about.
Exactly. We write
I was going to say, you need a team too. It's not, you need other people to help you along and critique your work, and because nobody's perfect. It needs a bunch of eyes on one project for it to really be executed properly.
Yeah, that's a really important aspect, is that I think a lot of people think that, you know, as a designer, like all the inspiration has to come from, you know, this one spot in your brain, you know, and it's just you. And I do way better work when I bounce it off my whole team and we collaborate, and I'm amazed at what sometimes really junior people can bring to the table, and that they can just have this sort of thought that's this great epiphany, and it's like, yeah, that's way better than anything I thought of. So it's important to know that it's a group effort, and sometimes it's the trade worker, sometimes it's the client or whatever it is. So you got to be open to receiving all of those things and not think that you have to have all the answers.
I think we have time for a couple more. I know I see one back there.
In terms of when you started at the very, very beginning, how do you kind of scramble to broadcast yourself and really kind of get those first 5 jobs when you begin doing your work?
I was lucky. I started a design company right when I got out of school. And I was very fortunate with my partners, and we hit it during the heyday where we were throwing about 20 projects, and it was just crazy. And then the 2008, and the crash, Vancouver kind of went through it, but not really. And now we've kind of been through some years where we don't know where the next work is coming, because people aren't building and people aren't renovating. So sometimes you don't know. To be honest, you don't. The best design companies out there go through really dry spells.
What's your advice? Like, if you do hit
Save
a
money.
dry spell? You know, what can you do to pick up work? Or
I mean,
Marketing.
yeah, I can give a really good example of how we had never really done a retail store, but we wanted to get into doing retail. And you can't just volunteer and do a whole project. So what we did is started a program at Christmas in Gastown where we just went to some of our friends who own shops and we said, hey, can we do your Christmas decorations? And we did installations rather than kind of typical decorations. But that turned into, we did it for our 3rd year last year, but that's turned into being able to work on retail projects and hospitality projects just because we're in the environment and we're getting to know people and we're talking and we're networking. But that's one of those things where we volunteered our time. It was a lot of time, but because we had the time, because we weren't as busy working, it was the best way to do it. It was that idea of building your portfolio so that you can show people that, you know, I can actually do things.
And I think it's just do what it takes. These guys were so charmed with their beginning, and I wasn't, you know, I was doing, you know, bad bathroom renovations or whatever it might be that that I could get my hands on, because I just, but I think what saw me through was just straight enthusiasm. I just was willing to do whatever it took to get as much under my belt, and I felt this sense of, you know, being behind schedule because I was older, and so I was just trying to make up for lost time. And you know, I had the fortunate experience of having these clients that allowed me to build their first home, and you know, just entrusted me with it when I had no background in it, and that sort of you know, launched me to the next step. But you know, I was really, I mean, I didn't tell anybody that I would work for free, but that's kind of what I was willing to do. So, so you know, you just kind of have to get in and do what it takes, and that's the same when slower times hit. Being, you know, being ingenious and business-minded enough to have a good idea is to, you know, to take avenues. And just to put it out to the universe, right? Like, you just got to tell as many people as you possibly can what you want to be doing, even if you're not doing it yet. So it's just really throwing it out there.
okay, we have time probably for one more question. There's,
Hi there. So like you, this is a second career for me. I was in a long career in neuroscience before I decided to make the switch. So my question is a little bit twofold. As someone who is starting out again, who is slightly older, is it viable to have a design career without pursuing a registered interior designer classification, given the new educational requirements that are coming in through the NCIDQ? Or what's your advice on that? Would you say that's something that you ought to pursue, or are we in sort of an era now where you can graduate and then start a business and have it be viable?
I think it's just be honest. It's yeah, I think that any of the above is possible. It's just about really figuring out if there's limitations to what you can do without that, and just making sure that you then don't take on something beyond what you know, what kind of impression you're giving, right? So it's just being honest and straightforward about what your education and background is, because it historically, you know, it has been a little bit gray as to what an interior designer's qualifications actually are, and so I think it's just about making sure that you don't get caught in a position where you're trying to take on too much, but there's still a lot of work that you could be doing.
Yeah, and it really does depend on what type of work you want to do. If you want to work for a big firm and do big chain retail stores, or work on airports or hospitals, you need a degree and you need to get your NCIDQ. If that doesn't interest you and you want to go on another track, similar to the way that we've done it, I've always been taught from my dad and from business school is always staff your weaknesses. So in our business, we're working on a restaurant right now, and since it's our first one, we brought in another designer who has 20 years of experience doing restaurant design, so that we're not trying to pretend that we know things that we don't know. But she's been, and we're collaborating with her, and it's an amazing experience. It's a great way for us to learn. We're not making as much money on it, but that's fine. So there's always a way to learn, and your qualification, I think, is it's something that people will look at the beginning of your career, but once you start your career, it's more important about what your portfolio is like.
And just to give you some confidence, I know a lot of people out there that are very successfully doing, you know, maybe just more finishing and decorating and the furnishings and the details, and they have a very successful career, and they have very little background in it at all. It's just been years of experience that they have slowly, you know, been increasing their portfolio that way, and it's worked really well for them.
Great. All right, well, thank you for coming out and chatting with us. And if you don't mind, maybe if you stick around a few minutes afterwards, people who have more questions can chat with you about that. And thanks to all of you for coming out. And we are offering currently an IDS West subscription special where you can get 50% off a subscription to Grey Magazine. And we have more information about that in the back. And we have another talk coming up at 3:30, and it's about luxury in design. So, thank you.